I was 4 years old when we were evicted from our house because of the Group Areas Act, along with 3 million other people who lost their homes. So for me, politics wasn't a choice. It was forced onto me. And that's what happened to many people of my generation and all generations, before me, going right back to the arrival of the first white settlers in this country in 1652. And after so many generations of apartheid, racism, institutionalized, legalized, there comes a point in time where you start to believe that you are not as good as white people. And when I was a teenager, that's what I believed. That why am I prevented from so many things? I couldn't get on a bus that was for whites, couldn't go to a cinema that was for whites, I couldn't even go onto the Indian Ocean where my ancestors came, because the most of it was reserved for whites. So every avenue of pursuing a pathway of hope and opportunity was blocked to us, because we were less than human to those that were in power. And this didn't start in 1948. This started with Britain. And so if you go through that history, when I was 15, I go to a meeting with my elder brother where Steve Biko was talking. And as soon as I heard him speak in a Lutheran church, crowded with hundreds of us, surrounded by the security police, so a very intimidating presence. And I understood then when he said that the mind of the oppressed is the main weapon in the hands of the oppressor, and that we have nothing to lose but our chains. Steve Biko gave to my generation, millions of us, the political direction that we should go in, taken into a struggle, harnessed into a struggle in which we were prepared to die for our freedom. So that was an act of devotion, that in faith one will consider someone to be very eminent, very committed to the pursuit of something more than what represents us in this body, in this mind, and this intellect, to transcend ourselves, to begin to believe that we are all part of one, a divine oneness, and that any ideology, any politics, any strategy, any initiative that detracts from that, that undermines that, that marginalizes that, and puts power of superiority in the hands of someone else based on language, based on religion, based on color, that is false. That is the God of falsehood. So we always believed that. That was an act of devotion. And that's what made us who we were. That in 1976, we rose up in our millions to bring down apartheid. So yes, organizing requires us to start as individuals, but eventually gather with others to develop a collective vision towards what the future would be. And that became what we call the Reconstruction and Development Programme, which became the election manifesto of the African National Congress that won it a landslide victory in 1994. But it came out of the trade union movement. While we were very happy to ally ourselves with political parties around ending apartheid, we were more interested in what replaces apartheid. And that's where we had major failure that created the crisis we have of governance in the country today. An anecdote of how I learned to organize. I remember coming out of the South African Students' Organization headed by Steve Biko. And one of the things after 1976, when we were smashed and literally thousands of people had to leave the country, many were arrested and many were tortured and many were killed actually in the Soweto uprisings. What happened is that we felt victorious. We were millions in the street. We had a collective vision. We want to bring down apartheid. But they smashed us. And the reason was, when we looked behind our shoulders, we found that we had left behind our parents. We had left behind the workers. We had left behind the rural people. We had left behind women and people living in communities. And then I realized then, that actually student politics is great, but at a certain point it is not sustainable. I had to integrate myself into communities or constituencies that were permanent. Students were not permanent. And one day, an old worker came past me, and he happened to be a trade unionist in a prior period in the 50s. And he said, "Hey, Sonny boy, come and walk with me." So I walked with him to the bus stop, and he says, "You are very disciplined. You are here every morning for weeks on end. They harass you, you're still back again. The police came and arrested you, but you're back again. And I like that. But let me tell you something. No one understands what you wrote in the pamphlet." So I said, "Oh." He says, people in the working class right now at this point are worried about women being fired for falling pregnant, low wages, abusive treatment by supervisors. There are many working conditions that have to be improved. Start there. The bread and butter issues that affect workers. And he said, the second thing, you're standing outside the gate here. You are being photographed, anyone speaking to you. So they go back after speaking to you and they get victimized. So the best thing is actually walk with the workers to the bus stop, get on the bus with them. If your conversation is good and they invite you to step down and have a cup of tea in their house, then you've got the champion you're looking for. The idea of organizing is to find the champion, the person that will, in most probability, take forward the goal and the vision that we will co-create together. And that was another thing we learned. So in a context where we are, you take people with such divergent views and prejudices, and you say, you're going to work together. It's like, let me give you another example. It's like me living in a house with someone who is a different color, a different religion, comes from a different continent, speaks a different language, has a different profession. It's so different that it will not feature in my mind. Now you're expecting them to live in one house. So if you look at multiculturalism in the world, and in South Africa, we're having the rise of tribalism. We're having the rise of racism again. We are having the rise of narrow nationalism. But the same in the world. You look at Europe today, it's Fortress Europe. They want to keep anyone with a dark skin out of Europe. Even now, when I want to get a visa, they say, no, you're only allowed a visa if you have a ticket. So they're no longer issuing visas for long-term, usually black South Africans. My father was intellectual, but limited by apartheid. He served as a court interpreter. There used to be a line of people coming to our house, and I never understood why as a kid. And later on, when he had passed, because he passed when I was still young, an old friend of his came to me and said, "You know why that line of people were coming to your house? People accused of crimes having to appear in the court. And they came to tell your father the story, the true story of what they faced. And in that context, under apartheid, people were being arrested left, right, and center for the smallest and the most trivial of offenses. So it was extortion. That's what apartheid was. And he would listen to them very carefully. And when they went to court, and if he believed them, it didn't matter what they said. He would translate what the magistrate, the white magistrate, needed to hear. So he was the judge. It wasn't the white magistrate. And it taught me something. Those were the foundation values, that you stand for fairness, And then meeting Steve Biko, of course, changed my political life and was the most important political influence in my life. And then I had thousands of workers, usually illiterate, usually living in brutal conditions in dormitories, and those were my main teachers. It wasn't textbooks. I went to the University of Life. Although I started studying to be a medical doctor, and I was doing my Bachelor of Science degree second year, I left when they murdered Steve Biko. We became what was called permanent revolutionaries, something we prepared to die for, our freedom. And many did die, and many sacrificed, and people I know and were part of my family within the union movement. And to see the betrayal that is going on in this country by union leaders and the political elites, sometimes it rouses the fire within me.